everyone. Welcome to the weekly devotional. Let's just start with worship as we spend some time in the Word together. So here we go. Jesus Christ, I think upon your sacrifice. You became nothing and poured out to death. Many times I've wondered at your gift of life, and I'm in that place once again. I'm in that place once again. Once again I look upon the cross where you died. I'm humbled by your mercy and I'm broken inside. And once again I thank you. Once again I pour out my life. Now you are exalted to the highest place, King of the heavens, where one day I'll bow. But for now, I marvel at this saving grace, and I'm full of praise once again. I'm full of praise once again. Once again I look upon the cross where you died. I'm humbled by your mercy and I'm broken inside. And once again I thank you. Once again I pour out my life. Thank you for the cross. Thank you for the cross. Thank you for the cross, my friend. Thank you for the cross. Thank you for the cross. Thank you for the cross, my friend. Sing thank you for the cross. Thank you for the cross. Thank you for the cross, my friend. Lord, we thank you, and thank you for the cross. Thank you for the cross, oh Lord. Thank you for the cross, my friend. Once again I look upon the cross where you died. I'm humbled by your mercy and I'm broken inside. And once again I thank you. Once again I pour out my life. And once again I thank you. Once again I pour out my life.
Church, welcome to this week's Thursday devotional. I'm going to get straight into it because I don't want this video to be too long. So I'll start with Leviticus 25, 1-5, and 8-11. I'll read it for us. The Lord spoke to Moses on Mount Sinai, saying, "Speak to the people of Israel and say to them, when you come into the land that I give to you, the land shall keep a Sabbath to the Lord. For 6 years you shall sow your field, and for 6 years you shall prune your vineyard and gather in its fruits. But in the 7th year there shall be a Sabbath of solemn rest for the land, a Sabbath to the Lord. You shall not sow your field or prune your vineyard. You shall not reap what grows of itself in your harvest, or gather the grapes of your undressed vine. It shall be a year of solemn rest for the land." And then 8-11. You shall count 7 weeks of years, 7 times 7 years, so that the time of the 7 weeks of years shall give you 49 years. Then you shall sound the loud trumpet on the 10th day of the 7th month. On the day of atonement, you shall sound the trumpet throughout all your land, and you shall consecrate the 50th year, and proclaim liberty throughout the land to all of its inhabitants. It shall be a jubilee to you, jubilee for you, when each of you shall return to his property, and each of you shall return to his clan. That 50th year shall be a jubilee for you. In it you shall neither sow nor reap what grows of itself, nor gather the grapes from the undressed vines. So, as you guys can tell, today's devotional, I actually wanted to talk about rest, about Sabbath rest, especially as our church is coming to the end of a season, end of an academic year, end of life group year. We usually have a break in between life groups starting from the winter semester to the spring summer, and that falls in line with finals and whatnot. And I just really felt that for this season, for myself too, like I really need radical rest. So getting into the passage a little bit, I think a lot of us know about the weekly practice of Sabbath or Shabbat for those who are Jewish. And obviously, I guess in that context, they take one day off, usually it's Saturday, and they declare that day of no rest in accordance with the creation story in Genesis. So I think most of us know about that. But what I was reading from this passage is that there's actually more variations off of that. So every 7 days you have a Sabbath day. And then it says, even in the first passage that we read, every 7 years there's a Sabbath year. But what's really cool too is that it even goes beyond that. And in Leviticus 25, verse 8, it says, well, I'll read the NIV because I think it's more clear. Count off 7 Sabbath years, 7 times 7 years, so that the 7 Sabbath years amount to a period of 49 years. So even every 7 Sabbath years, so that's every 49 years, they have this like crazy year of freedom and like a humongous rest called the Year of Jubilee. And I'm not going to talk about specifically what they did on the Year of Jubilee. That's important. But one thing I wanted to point out from this section is that it demonstrates the kind of radical rhythms that the Israelites had when it comes to rest. And I think even in our modern day, we don't necessarily live like in an agrarian world where we have to like sow our food. Well, at least, I mean, I don't. I mean, maybe some of you guys have farms and whatnot. But even for like myself, it's really difficult actually to have good boundaries between rest and work. I think being like a PhD student whose advisor is very graciously, very flexible to me. My first couple of years were like a really big struggle, and I always bled my work into my rest and my rest into my work. So whenever I was working, I was always like, slacking off and not like being productive. And even when I was trying to rest, I was like, oh my God, I should be working right now. And then my advisor actually told me, you should really define your work-life balance. Like find a good work-life balance that works for you. And of course, like some seasons will be more busy than others, and some will be more restful than others. And people are built differently and prefer different things. But I think what this passage is telling us is not even just like what we should do, but it tells us something about the nature of who we are and how God has commanded us, is that everyone needs a rhythm and an intentionality. And some seasons you have to fight for that more than others because no one is expecting that of you. Like for me as a PhD student whose advisor doesn't really micromanage my life, thank God. Like I had to define that for myself, and that's a discipline in itself. And that's not just a recommendation. That's biblical according to this passage. And I think especially in our culture, there's a fight for us to fight a hyper-productive culture where every opportunity is an opportunity to work. And so that's what you should be doing. Like, oh, I should be working right now. It means you can never actually rest, and that's really, really tiring. I think also from the Year of Jubilee, like I said, we don't live in an agrarian culture, so I'm actually not entirely sure what we can take away from this. But I think it does say something about the nature of long, extended rest. Like even in academia, professors take sabbatical years, and that's coming from the biblical precedent, probably from when universities were more religiously associated. But yeah, they take time off every like 10 or 7 years to travel, gain new perspectives about research and whatnot. And I think what this shows that even during elongated faithful periods of work, even when a rhythmic rest, weekly rest is being taken, that justifies an extended period of rest. And maybe for some people that's like a gap year. For some of the students, maybe an extended vacation. For some of you working people, and maybe for some of the leaders of our church, like a sabbatical period. And I think during COVID, it's really hard actually to find this period of rest because we can't really travel. So just like with any other discipline, like in meeting for our life groups or doing our having our Sunday celebrations, we had to get creative. We had to get creative with what that means for us to take rest. Maybe, I don't know, go on a walk for like a day, go somewhere unexpected for a day with your mask on and socially distance, right? Whatever it takes, find those rhythms. And I think that's what this passage is really telling us. I think one thing this takes is also a radical trust. So I'll read really quickly Leviticus 25:18-22. Therefore you shall do my statutes and keep my rules and perform them, and then you will dwell in the land securely. And the land will yield its fruit, and you will eat your fill and dwell in it securely. And if you say, what shall we eat in the 7th year, if we may not sow or gather in our crop? I will command my blessing on you in the 6th year, so that it will produce a crop sufficient for 3 years. When you sow in the 8th year, you will be eating some of the old crop. You shall eat the old until the 9th year, when the crop arrives. So that's actually pretty crazy. It's like the Israelites were also thinking like, okay, you're telling us to take this gap year of a Sabbath to like not make any food, but what are we going to eat that year? We don't have any food, and how will we sow for the next year if we're not doing work that year? So God is like, hey, I'll give you 3 years worth of food in that last year before you take that Sabbath, before the Sabbath year, and that will be sufficient for 3 years for the year for that year before the Sabbath year itself, and the year following that, so that you can actually prepare for the year after that. And I think that's pretty amazing that God promised them that if they obeyed His commandment for rest, He would provide adequately, in many ways more than adequately. Like I had a friend who believed that Sabbath must be a dedicated day, and I remember he challenged me to trust God to provide in my lab work in ways that I couldn't even anticipate, because that would mean me wanting more trust in me, and that's what he was hoping for. And that's still something I kind of struggle with, is like how far do I go to say that, Lord, I trust you, even with my time, my lab work, with the things that I need. Like how am I going to keep up with my colleagues? How am I going to keep up with the world if I take this rest? And I think that takes a very radical trust in God's provision. And I think there's also comes this tension in us too. Like we think about this kind of rest that we're commanded, whether or not it's like in the logistically the way that God told the Israelites, like God has commanded us to still. We're built to have this rest. God Himself took rest. But is it selfish to rest this radically? And I think the Bible even calls rest a radical responsibility. So in Leviticus chapter 26, I'll read verses 27-28 and then 33-35. I'll read it right now. But if in spite of this you will not listen to me, but walk contrary to me, then I will walk contrary to you in fury, and I myself will discipline you sevenfold for your sins. 33. I will scatter you among the nations. I will unsheath the sword after you, and your land shall be a desolation, and your cities shall be a waste. Then the land shall enjoy its Sabbaths, as long as it lies desolate. While you are in your enemy's land, then the land shall rest and enjoy its Sabbaths. As long as it lies desolate, it shall have rest, the rest that it did not have on your Sabbaths when you were dwelling in it. So I think this is actually pretty crazy, because the way that this is written is that it's not just a recommendation, right? This is a responsibility of the Israelites to take rest, and not just for themselves, but for the sake of their society, so that God would not punish them for disobedience, and also for their land. And I think this is a pretty cool idea, because we talk about sustainability, like environmental sustainability, and it seems like such a modern topic, but it's actually a biblical precedent. Like this concept that you let the land rest, and like God desires the land to rest. And I think now in our modern day, people are actually looking at the way that we treat the world and saying, there's something wrong with that. And that's not something new. That's something that God has taught us from a long time ago. And then also this concept that we don't just rest for our own sake, but we rest for the sake of others as well. We rest for our society. Rest may seem selfish, and it can be taken selfishly, right? If you disregard the needs of others all the time for the sake for you to have your rest. But rest, like I said, rest was commanded as a moral obligation. And I think one of my co-leaders, when I was serving with her in leading Impact, She once said, the temptations in life are strong enough. Like, she needs to sleep early and get the adequate amount of sleep that she needed to face those temptations with a sober mind and strength. And what she was saying was, like, why should we open ourselves so haphazardly to temptation and put ourselves and others at the hand of sin by overworking ourselves? And it's true. We can't serve well if we are tired and bitter at others because we're tired, because we haven't gotten our rest. And of course, life will call for periods in which we will sacrifice for us to forego rest for the sake of others. But that normal rest must be found in Jesus and abiding in his commandments. So there's that radical responsibility. So as we come to the end of this time, I wanted to provide some reflection and prayer, even for our church as we go into a period of rest, ministry rest, school rest. So starting with radical rhythms, as a reflection, do you have a normal time of rest and normal times of dedicated work in your life, even when things are busy? And as we come to the end of the life group season, how do you plan on finding and being restored by God during rest? And another question for radical trust is, how are you trusting or not trusting that God will provide in radical ways this busy season? And then lastly, about radical responsibility. Why do you rest? How can you see your rest as a service to others and a worship to God? So I'll give us some time to reflect on those questions, and then I'll give us our prayer topic at the end. 'Okay, cool. Hopefully that reflection was good. Um, the last thing I want us to do is just to pray for ourselves, our church leaders and church body to be refreshed and provided rest in this upcoming season, in this little break that we have between life groups. And as being like a leader in our church, I look forward to this period, not because I want life group to end, but because I do look forward to that rest. But that's not just for the church leaders. That's also for y'all's as well, for people who are those who are attending life group and part of these normal seasons of busyness. And that's just to give you guys opportunity to have rest, and pray that you guys, this church, our entire church body, not just our church leaders, but especially our church leaders, like the pastors, the staff, ETTC, they can be given that rest. Yeah, so just pray for this radical rest, that we can practice that together. 13 minutes, not too bad. All right. Thanks for listening today. Hopefully that made sense. I'll see you guys around.